It is Monday, December the 20th. I am John Pollock, joined by Ting, who is no way home at the moment. Are you, Wei?
Um, Not at the moment. Yeah, because we're actually pre-taping this one a little bit earlier because I'm tentatively scheduled to catch Spider-Man with WH a bit later prior to our review coming out on Tuesday. So, no super chats today, but do come back tomorrow if you have a question.
There's definitely a metaverse joke I could make, but I'm not advanced enough to make it, of where you are versus where you are.
It's okay.
A
We'll
tale
leave
of
leave
a
that to
tale of two
WH.
Tings. We are coming off of the weekend, and I will say this is our last big week of the year. We will talk about it a bit more, but next week we're going to have a much more reduced schedule. We are not going to be doing the daily news show for the last week of December. We will return on January 3rd. But you're going to get shows this week through Thursday. And then Friday, the Christmas show comes out. So that will be our big release on Friday. No Rewind to SmackDown this Friday night. We are not working on Christmas Eve, but you will have more than enough to listen to with additional details coming tonight. But Wei, you mentioned Spider-Man off the top, and you will be chatting about that this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So WH and I were originally scheduled to record earlier this afternoon. We usually record these just kind of the two of us, but because we ended up picking like a later start time, and because we're deciding to do this one via Zoom, he and I, we're choosing to do it on Tuesday evening, and that means we could do it live. So we want to invite all the Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. I know a lot of people have probably seen this by now, and are wanting to maybe chime in on the conversation. So Tuesday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, right after NXT. It appears to be the best time that fits both of our schedules. But we'll be joined by John Cena to break down the movie as well as take some of your opinions about Spider-Man: No Way Home.
What was your weekend like, Wei? Because you were expecting to watch this on Thursday night. It is now Monday. How did you fare this weekend?
Um, Totally fine. Actually, everybody has been like really respectful. So I mean, I've just kind of kept certain things muted on my timeline, but I've been able to stay away pretty well.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that you did not download a show that was going to talk about the movie, and you
Yeah.
didn't find yourself learning about aspects of that by listening?
No, I've stayed completely away.
Well, I look forward to your review. I'm going to listen to it on Tuesday. I'm going to listen to your review, and then by the time I see this movie, I'll probably have forgotten the podcast. But I'm going to listen to you guys. That's how I'm going to be. That's going to be my Spider-Man viewing experience. It's going to be through you.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm going to adopt your opinions of the movie. I would really like to go to this, but it's not going to happen. At least not this week. How was your weekend otherwise?
Yeah, I actually managed to get a booster. So
Oh.
I was kind of dealing with some of the effects of it actually. Because it wasn't so much, just like, for like 24 hours, just some mild like flu-like symptoms. But after that, just kind of chilling at home.
Well, that's good. I'm going for mine on Wednesday, actually.
Nice.
Yes.
Great.
So there you go. We will be fully boosted by the end of
Yeah.
this week. Bad segue, but this Wednesday we will be joined by Dr. Alex Patel on the Daily News Show. He is going to stop by, a clinical care physician here in Ontario, who has become a go-to representative, appearing on national news broadcasts here in Canada. He is being gracious enough with his time. Obviously, I told him, listen, I know your schedule is completely crazy. And he said with notice, he can come on with us for 20 minutes or so on Wednesday. So Wednesday's news show, where we're going to, maybe we'll talk a little bit about some wrestling topics, but it'll mainly be about kind of going into the holiday season. And I'm sure people have a whole new renewed set of questions that Dr. Patel can hopefully answer for us as well. So that will be coming out Wednesday live at 1. But let's touch on some topics that came out of the weekend. Number one being Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. Wei, did you see the knockout? I'm not going to ask about the fight, because I think the fight has been universally panned, and it will just be remembered for the closing knockout.
I have seen the knockout. I actually completely forgot about the fight even happening on Saturday evening. But afterwards I saw all the Twitter headlines, and it was a pretty widely shared series
that
of
photo, I mean, was just built for shared. I like
yeah.
you feel awful for Tyron Woodley. I really
Mhm.
detest when people just mock fighters who anyway, that's a whole separate discussion, but I mean for the Jake Paul business, this could not have been better. That here he is, he knocks out Tyron Woodley, and you have all of these potential fights on the horizon in 2022, but I think all the biggest ones way are going to be with fighters that have a contractual attachment at the moment to the UFC. But the idea of Jake Paul, like it's a really brilliant strategy of taking MMA fighters that are treating these fights almost like their gold watch at the end of a career. Where, I mean, Tyron Woodley did make great money when he fought Stephen Thompson at Madison Square Garden, but you have a lot of fighters that at the end of their career, they are past their primes. And here is an opportunity to make a tremendous amount of money for one night in a different sport. These are not trained boxers in the same sense. And Jake Paul, like this is I think it's a story that will continue into 2022, and it's only a question of the level of fighters that will be signing up to fight Jake Paul.
Yeah, honestly, say what you want, but I certainly feel like he's done a lot better than I think any of us pegged out that he would when he started this whole thing. And if it hasn't already gotten to the point where, I'm sure some people actually want to give him are giving him some legitimate respect. I mean, I certainly am, if anything, maybe I didn't see the fight, have no real interest in seeing the whole fight, but if anything, for the amount of money that he has made in the combat sport in 2021, it's to me quite the incredible phenomenon. Again, not that great maybe for the sport of boxing as a whole necessarily, but or is it, John? Like, do you think
I
it's
think
inspiring people to get into the sport?
I certainly believe that the lion's share of fans that are checking this out are not your fans that are watching boxing on a weekly basis, that are becoming huge fans of the sport. However, I think one fighter in particular that has gained a lot from this is Amanda Serrano, who was on the undercard of this fight and has been attached to these Jake Paul fights. She's a tremendous female boxer, and it looks like it has set up a mega fight for next year with Katie Taylor, who's an Irish boxer. And there is one case where like her career has absolutely been helped by this. And I look at it as well. I always want to see fighters make as much as they can. And I'd include Jake Paul in that. Like, I think Jake Paul will get a lot of points from people because of the fact he kept this card together on a couple weeks' notice where Tommy Fury fell out. Jake Paul would have been well within his rights to just say, hey, I lost my opponent. The whole card gets shelved. Nobody makes anything. There's almost 18,000 tickets that we'd have to refund. But instead, just they found an opponent. They ran it back with Tyron Woodley. They kept the show going. He gets a knockout at the end. Like, we have no illusions that Jake Paul is this elite boxer that would be able to contend with the sport's elite. Like, that's not the league he is in. Like, this is tiers of boxing, and he is at, your C or D tier, and at the top of that C or D tier. But it has an enormous, this is a star-driven business. It's the link of everything that we talk about, whether it's wrestling, boxing, MMA. That is the unifying trait, and he has certainly broken out in that fact. And with Nate Diaz, just my final point, like, he has one fight remaining on his UFC deal, and everyone is putting so much stock into, he could get blown out in his last fight and that'll affect a Jake Paul fight. It will have no impact. If Nate Diaz gets blown out in 30 seconds against Khamzat Chimaev next year and goes to fight Jake Paul, it will still have a gigantic interest. And I think that is the big fight of this caliber to make.
Well, he was there in person, claimed to have no interest in the outcome, but nonetheless was present, was he not? So, I think those of us that are watching, or those of you that are watching this right now, I'm assuming most of you are wrestling fans, and I think we can all at least appreciate spectacle, even if sometimes the actual athletics may not be up to certain standards. I think it's incredibly impressive what these brothers have somehow managed to create, and the amount of interest that they have, and the amount of paydays that they've been able to make for actual professional athletes.
Watch that post-fight interview conducted by Ariel Helwani, no less, with Logan and Jake in the ring together, and just like you want to see these two just get their comeuppance at the end. And you know what, Jake Paul, he was very complimentary towards Tyron Woodley in the ring. Like, look, dude, Tyron Woodley realistically saved this card. You could not have just found anybody to fight Jake Paul. You needed somebody of some name stature. And Tyron Woodley, like it wasn't the most optimal fight. I don't know how many were clamoring for the rematch, but it was enough. And I guess the number, if it does in fact come out, will kind of tell the tale on that. But you know, linking this to Wrestling Way, like I was starting to think over the weekend about WrestleMania. You have your 2 nights. Bad Bunny was a tremendous success this past year, and maybe they're going to go to the well with Bad Bunny again. But I 100% believe we will have that kind of celebrity tie-in. And they've been very strategic, I think, over this last year or so with their celebrities. We had seen an involvement of Logan Paul already. Jake would be a great get. Could you fathom either of the Paul brothers doing something at WrestleMania where I think they would gain something as well from that in a controlled environment and get, 6 weeks of television and then a blow off where as a tag or just one of the brothers involved?
Well, I think WWE would absolutely love it. You're like, look at these numbers, look at the amount of interest. They are certainly mainstream stars. Even I think outside of the combat sports connection, they were really big stars for a very coveted demographic that they want to reach. But now that they're pay-per-view stars and legitimate draws, I absolutely think that they want to, and the question is if the Paul brothers want to at this point. They're the ones with the leverage. They're the ones with the clout in the mainstream. And we've seen Logan Paul do stuff. Jake, I think, is at a far higher caliber now at this point.
Yes.
Would they be dedicated enough to do the training for a professional wrestling match? That is kind of tough for me to see. Like some sort of special guest spot, perhaps, sure. But the amount of money that they could be devoting their time to spending training professional wrestling will probably be better used to, train for a boxing match that they can make that much more money for.
Yeah, if the bar is Bad Bunny, very few outsiders are going to have even half that commitment. Like there are just not celebrities that are uprooting their lives to go to the performance center to train. But that's maybe that's where the expectation is going to be, both internally in the company and of the fan base that received Bad Bunny very, very well, because it was very well known how much time he put into it. But anyway, it's just an idea to throw out there. Stardom held a card over the weekend. It was their Osaka Super Wars card, and the main the main stories coming out of the show. We had the 10 million yen prize contest, 10 million yen at stake, hung above the ring, which I had to bring out my Squid Game conversion calculator to see what we were talking about here. I believe this is north of 6 figures here. But it was Natsupoi, Hameka, and Micah securing the 100 grand at the end of it all, with Natsupoi grabbing the briefcase at the end of this all. And then the other big match was the Captain's Fall match involving, we had Queen's Quest taking on Oedo Tai, and Momo Watanabe at the end gets herself intentionally disqualified, joining Oedo Tai. This coming after just over 19 minutes of action. And then you had Shuri running the gauntlet ahead of her World of Stardom Championship match with Utami coming up on December 29th. So that was they have a show on Christmas Day, but this was their last major show before the big Sumo Hall show coming up on December the 29th. And Stardom has done what we're going to see New Japan and Noah execute, and that is their big shows. They have this format now of presenting these on pay-per-view where you can pay extra to get them live, or you can wait several days before they show up on Stardom World. And that's going to be the case for the 29th card. But I think Stardom's in really great shape going into this 29th card. And I think as we get to the year end, there will be a lot of attention on Stardom at the end of the year. I know we talk about Game Changer, but I look at this year as great years for Stardom and Game Changer, just in terms of where they were 365 days ago to now.
Yeah, I totally agree. As somebody who kind of, experiences all of this stuff on the periphery, they're definitely the two promotions that I'm hearing about the most, other than, your usual AEW, WWE. And as far as like positive momentum goes, those are the two companies, especially with Bushiroad. Their other company maybe not receiving the best press over the past year. Stardom, I don't think has really, had too much negative publicity attached to it. So, speaking of which, there's the Wrestle Kingdom match, of course, that's set to take place on night 2.
Right.
Do you think that much interest will transfer over to Stardom because like how much has it, do you think, necessarily affected their business in previous years when they've done these sort of co-promotion things?
I mean, we've seen kind of the pattern that it's almost just exhibitions of Stardom picking out several of their stars they want featured and putting them on the show. I don't know if there's all that I'm certain that there is some exposure that they're getting to being on these shows, but I don't know how much you can attribute to an audience seeing let's be honest, on these shows, these are kind of throwaway tags. They are not substantive matches for Stardom. And after 2 nights of them, are you creating new Stardom fans? It doesn't hurt. I like to see them do this, but I don't know what the overall what are the goals of this? Is it to create Stardom World subscribers? I don't think that's coming out of a 10-minute tag.
Yeah, and I ask then at that point, like, what is the point of doing it? Like, this is a Bushiroad company now for a couple of years, and the integration between what I would still assume to be a far bigger New Japan audience, at least in terms of cross promotion, has been very minimal.
Yeah, like to me, I would almost want to have like a pre-match video that at least gives more character depth than just here are 4 wrestlers that are being put in a tag. They're kind of divorced from story on top of it. I would want to have a match that maybe has been built up a little, have a high-speed championship defense, have a future of Stardom defense. It doesn't have to be your biggest match. I wouldn't throw Tommy and Shuri on the undercard of Wrestle Kingdom by any means, but I think it's something that it rewards the Stardom viewer that this is worth seeing, that has some stakes attached to it as well. But again, at the same time, you don't want to come across like ECW would back in the WWE version of it, where the ECW title match, it was their biggest match and it was just buried on a WWE pay-per-view. And if you're not following the show, it just comes off as a nothing brand. At the same point, it just seems like it's a very it's a relationship that it just seems to like inch forward. And you look at on paper, you would see all these different opportunities and very few of them are explored. And, that also dovetails into just New Japan as well, working with Noah, and a lot of dissatisfaction with this co-promoted card on January 8th, that here you had the opportunity to reach out to all of these fans and bring back some lapsed fans at the same time with some dream matches, with something of stakes. And you see a card that I think the wrestling will be fine. I think there'll be some fun interactions, but is it driving you to buy a pay-per-view if you're a New Japan World subscriber? I would say a lot of people might just wait till this either shows up online or they wait till it's on the service of choice rather than spending an extra $30-$40.
I think a continued interesting question is with regards to like Japanese wrestling promotions businesses is how focused are they on the live aspect versus what comes across on their networks or TV or their streaming services or pay-per-view. From what I understand, they're still very much a live events based business, and maybe that's more so what they care about rather than trying to get people. It's a bonus, I suppose. If people buy this on pay-per-view or subscribe to their services, but from a North American fans perspective, we're obviously more weighted towards the streaming.
Yeah, but I would also say to like the native viewer in Japan, it's like you can service both. Like a dream match on top is only going to help. Like the Yokohama Arena is not a small building, and this one to me, if this does well from a live event perspective, it's obviously the novelty of New Japan and Noah is enough to carry this show beyond any special match attached to it.
Right.
Raw tonight is in Milwaukee, and my goodness, we have a bit of a lineup here. So we have 2 interview segments. It's the return of the Cutting Edge, where Edge will interview Maurice, and then Miz TV will also be featured on this show with AJ Styles and Omos as the guests. And then look at this lineup of matches. AJ and Omos, after being on Miz TV, will face Rey and Dominic Mysterio. Finn Balor takes on Austin Theory. Rhea Ripley against Queen Zelina. For the 3rd week in a row, Bianca Belair versus Doudrop. You know, that pin last week, Way, how definitive was it? It's, you know, you've got to beat your opponent into oblivion, so there is no doubt left.
Yeah, that's how we advance in storylines, isn't it? You know, you go 3-0, and then the loser gets a title shot.
And then we have a championship contenders match between Damian Priest and Dolph Ziggler, as Dolph Ziggler starts on his road to earning a United States championship match. This could be the start of a lengthy, maybe 8-10 weeks.
Yeah, you know, I applaud them for actually having a card in advance. Like
This has to be the most they've announced in forever.
And this isn't even a pre-tape show, right?
No, they're live tonight.
That's incredible. So we'll see how much of this card stays intact. I wanted to get your thoughts, John, on the video that they shot with the angle for Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch. Did you have a chance to catch this thing?
I haven't watched it. I just saw it was like she was working out in the PC and was
well,
attacked.
Maybe you can watch a bit of it here.
All right.
Because I hope we don't get flagged for this, but it's basically Liv Morgan shows up at the PC and she's about to attack who she thinks is Becky Lynch. But
oh my god, it's not Becky Lynch. Oh my goodness, I should have watched this before.
Once she slings this cane at this poor redhead, she realizes, it wasn't Becky, but some other redhead. But wouldn't you know it, Becky Lynch, the actual Becky Lynch, shows up behind her, grabs the cane, and starts beating her. This thing, John.
Dude, I'm so glad actually I did not watch this until now. So you're getting my true genuine reaction.
God, this shit is fucking, it was awful. Like, and number one, I applaud them for actually taking the time out to shoot some stuff outside of arena, which I don't think they do enough. But God, like at a time when I think the bar is relatively high for this sort of thing, even like, you know, like we just went through a whole year of cinematic matches, you know, 2 years, like a year and a half of cinematic matches. And it varied in quality, of course, but even WWE themselves managed to put on work a bit better than this. You know, in the back, you have Jeremy Borash and like, I'm sorry, I forget the other person who worked on that Impact team, but like they were responsible for the final deletion and all that stuff. And this was what they came out with. You know, this thing was just like so campy. You know, like it requires you to suspend your disbelief to feel like Liv Morgan somehow magically appeared in the ring with nobody seeing her. Just even the cheesiness of having like the redhead with hair draped over her head and somehow Liv Morgan not realizing it's not Becky until the end. It's so like, man, to say like it can't be, sure, like you might enjoy it for so bad it's good reasons, but I don't think a multi-million-dollar company should be functioning that way. Anyway, just awful.
Wow, that was well, that was something. Yeah, it's funny because you have seen especially with Giancarlo now back working with GCW, that, you know, every big GCW show, they're putting out a lot of these backstage, like this past weekend, you know, Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green storming out and then quitting the company, putting out a lot of these videos. And it's just, I think it really just adds to the appeal that they're very smart in the fact that not everyone are ordering these pay-per-views, but we're taking a lot of these little vignettes that get shot and we put those up. So that continues the story in case you've missed the event and kind of weaves the shows together.
Well, Triple H was certainly on the right track by hiring people like Giancarlo and you know,
that PC YouTube channel was putting out some of the best stuff that wasn't always getting the most eyes, but it was like really, it was just like real stories of people and following them. And, you know, it seemed like there was a huge push towards that. And I think you've seen that with like the way like the digital division has sort of been handled over the past year. And also like not necessarily the WWE network not being the same level of priority. It's going to affect kind of our hirings and how much resources we're putting into this when we've got a fixed deal for 5 years and we're not churning out content at near the rate we were a year ago.
But, you know, these are people that, you know, like Sean Ryan, these are people that I think we all really would have expected would have at least somehow made the jump to the main roster. I mean, when we talk about NXT,
that's the draft I want is like all the, like the behind the scenes people and seeing like who gets called up.
You know, but there's very much like a very clear old guard that's still in charge of producing a lot of this main roster stuff, and the audience that they're making it for is aware of all the other stuff that's being out there, and unfortunately, it looks very embarrassing standing up to something like what GCW is producing.
Well, I imagine we will see that video air again tonight for a national television audience. So we can look forward to that. Tonight we are live at 11:15 Eastern with Rewind to Raw. We will be live for Double Ice Cap and Espresso members at postwrestlingcafe.com. And a reminder that our jingle contest, we will be running it as part of the Christmas show. The deadline is Tuesday, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can enter your submissions at forum.postwrestling.com, or you can email them, john@postwrestling.com. We will go through these submissions. We will see what the response is this year to the jingle contest way. It's
might be a pretty easy pick this year.
Yeah, it might be a jingle contest end of an era on the Post Wrestling Christmas show. We will see. But that is coming out Friday with the Christmas show. Whole schedule is up at postwrestling.com, and we'll be back live tomorrow at 1 Eastern. So give a like to the video, as they say. Subscribe. Don't illegally share this. I don't even know how to do that, but don't do it.
Yeah, and if you're, for some reason, I guess nobody would be listening to this on Spotify because it's a Patreon feed. But if you do end up listening to us on Patreon, apparently there are comment sections now on star ratings on some sort of rating system on Patreon. So, on Spotify.
On Spotify.
I'm getting everything mixed up. So yeah, if you want to maybe give us a 7-star review,
book the day off work and just dedicate it to praise across all of our platforms. Lift the ship up, folks, and we'll keep trudging through these waters for everybody. On behalf of Wei Ting, I am John Pollock. Wei is currently in a movie. We hope he's having a great time. He is not going to see the ending coming, not from a mile away. We will talk to you tonight.